He was the most feared king alive, ruthless, untouchable, born to rule by the sword, until a child walked through a storm and said 6 words that shattered his world. "You're coming with me. I need a father." What followed wasn't just war. It was redemption, blood, and love written in moonlight. This is the Wolf King's Promise, a dark fantasy that will break your heart and make you believe again. The fortress of Varen Keep loomed like a scar against the stormlit mountains. Wind clawed at its towers and thunder rolled so close it felt alive. Inside, King Cale Draven, Alpha of the Iron Wolves, stood before the fire, his broad shoulders casting long, fractured shadows across the marble floor. He had been a warrior first, a ruler second, and a man long before both titles were stripped away by blood and betrayal. For 20 years he had ruled the northern marches with merciless order. His voice alone could still a council hall, his rage could silence an army. They called him the Wolf without mercy. Tonight, even the storm seemed to yield to him, until the doors of the throne chamber burst open. The guards dragged in a figure no taller than Cale's waist. A child, soaked to the bone, wrapped in a cloak torn from travel. Mud streaked across small hands that clutched the fabric as if afraid it might dissolve into nothing. "Your Majesty," the captain stammered, his face pale. "We found this one crossing the outer bridge. Alone." Cale didn't move at first. His golden eyes said to reflect a predator's soul, narrowed on the trembling shape before him. "Another spy?" His voice was low, almost conversational, but the guards flinched as though it were thunder itself. The child lifted its chin. The movement was deliberate, slow. Beneath tangled hair, 2 blue eyes gleamed, sharp, defiant. "I'm no spy," the child said. "I came for you." The room went utterly silent. Cale's advisors exchanged uneasy looks. The king's temper was infamous. His son and queen had died in the same rebellion that had taken his brother's life, or so the court believed. He had buried love that day. Buried it deep. "Do you know to whom you speak?" asked Lord Fenric, his pale face slick with contempt. "I do," the child said evenly. "You're the Wolf King. The one who never weeps." Cale rose. The sound of his armor shifting was like grinding stone. "Then you should know to kneel." The child didn't. Instead, it took a step forward. "I've walked 30 days through the frozen valleys. I've crossed the gray pass where the bones of travelers mark the path. I've come because I need you." The thunder outside cracked like a whip. Cale's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. The guards waited for the command to seize the intruder, yet it never came. "And why?" the king asked slowly. "Would you need me?" The child met his gaze with eyes too old for their years. "Because you're my father." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. Firelight flickered across Cale's face, illuminating scars and shadows. His hand froze halfway to the hilt of his sword. Gasps rippled through the chamber. "Ridiculous." Lord Fenric spat. "Sire, allow me." "Silence," Cale said softly. The word sliced through the air sharper than any blade. He stepped down from the dais until he stood before the child. The smell of rain, steel, and wolf pelt mingled between them. "What is your name?" he asked. "Eric." The name hit Cale like a blade to the chest. It was a name he had once whispered to a woman long ago, a woman who vanished before his crown turned cold. "Who sent you?" Cale demanded. "Who taught you this lie?" Eric said nothing. Instead, he rolled up one sleeve, revealing a mark upon his forearm, a crescent intertwined with the sword's hilt. The mark of the royal bloodline of Draven. The king's composure cracked for the briefest instant. His golden eyes widened, just enough for the council to notice. "My mother told me to show you this," Eric said quietly, "before she died." "Your mother's name?" "Elora of the Frostwood." That name broke through Cale's armor like a hammer. Elora, the healer who had once vanished during the rebellion's chaos. The one woman who had defied both his rage and his rule. Lord Fenric stepped forward, his voice sharp with fear. "Sire, this is a trick. The sigil can be branded by magic. Let me interrogate the boy." Cale raised a hand. The guards withdrew instantly. "Leave us," he ordered. "But, Your Majesty." "Now." The hall emptied until only stormlight and silence remained. Kale turned back to the boy. If this is deceit, he murmured, it will cost you your life. Eric lifted his chin again. Then I'll die telling the truth. Kale studied the mark once more. It shimmered faintly under the firelight, not painted, not carved. A birthright. His jaw tightened. Come, he said at last. There's only one way to know if what you claim is true. Outside, thunder split the night as the Wolf King led the child deeper into the castle's shadowed halls, toward the ancient chamber where truth could no longer be hidden. The deeper they went into the castle, the colder the air became. Eric's small boots echoed against the flagstones as Kale led him through twisting passages untouched by daylight. Torchlight danced along the walls, revealing carvings of wolves and moons older than any kingdom. At the end of a spiral stair stood an iron door banded with runes. Kale pressed his palm to its center, and the sigils glowed faintly. This place, he said, voice low, hasn't opened in 15 years. The door groaned and swung inward to reveal a round chamber lit by blue fire. In the center stood an altar carved from obsidian, its surface inlaid with silver lines forming a wolf's head. Upon it rested 3 crystal orbs pulsing faintly, the memory stones of the Draven line. Eric looked around, eyes wide. It smells like lightning, he whispered. Kale nodded once. These stones don't lie. They show what blood remembers. He motioned for the boy to approach. Place your hand upon the first stone. If you truly bear my line, it will answer you. Eric hesitated only a moment before pressing his palm to the crystal. For an instant, nothing happened. Then light burst outward in a brilliant swirl of blue and gold. Images filled the air above the altar. Fragments of a forest at night, a woman's voice singing softly, her hand resting over her swollen belly. Kale froze. Elora, he whispered, as if the name were a wound reopened. The vision changed. A younger Kale stood in armor beside her, his expression softer than anyone alive had ever seen. He reached for her hand, then the image shattered into darkness and fire. The memory dissolved, leaving only silence and the child, breathing hard. Kale turned away, his hands clenched. This proves nothing, he said, though his voice betrayed him. Sorcery can forge illusion. I didn't make it happen, Eric said quietly. It just did. It always does when someone's angry or afraid near me. Kale's eyes snapped to him. What do you mean? Eric raised his hands, and faint arcs of blue lightning danced between his fingers. Mother told me never to show anyone, he said. But she said it came from you. Kale's pulse hammered. That same light, he had seen it once before, in the hands of Elora, the healer who had called storms to protect a dying village during the rebellion. Magic. Real, royal, dangerous magic. The Draven bloodline lost the gift generations ago, Kale muttered, more to himself than the child. Until her. She said it would come back, Eric said softly. When the twin moons rose together. Kale turned sharply. The twin moons. Every scholar in the realm knew the prophecy. A child born under twin moons, carrying the blood of wolf and light, shall restore or ruin the crown. Who told you of that? Mother did. She said when both moons returned, I was to find the Wolf King and tell him that the night was not finished. Kale stared at him for a long, heavy silence. The night was not finished, he repeated, remembering the words Elora had whispered the night she vanished, leaving only her cloak and his broken heart behind. Before he could speak further, the heavy door creaked open. Lord Fenric appeared, breathless and pale. Forgive me, sire, but the High Seer demands your presence. The council is in uproar. Rumors of the child's arrival have spread. Kale's gaze flicked to Eric. They will call you a weapon or a curse, he said. Perhaps both. I don't care, the boy replied. I only came for what she said I'd find here. And what is that? Eric met his eyes. A father who remembers who he is. For the first time in years, Kale Draven had no answer. He turned toward Fenric. Clear the council chamber. No one sees this child until I command it. Do you understand? Fenric hesitated, something calculating flickering in his eyes. As you wish, my king. When he was gone, Kale looked back to the boy. The blue firelight flickered across their faces, 2 mirrors separated by time and regret. You shouldn't have come here, the king said quietly. You've set events in motion even I may not control. Then we face them together, Eric said. Like she said we would. The storm outside howled again, echoing through the fortress halls like a warning. In its voice, Cale thought he heard the past returning, and the first whisper of war. Morning brought no peace. Cale stood at the highest tower, watching mist crawl over the valley like smoke. The Iron Wolves, his elite guard, were already whispering of omens. Word of the child had spread faster than he could silence it. Down below, Eric stood in the courtyard under heavy guard. He looked small against the stone, but his gaze never left the sky. Captain Irina, Cale's most trusted warrior, joined him at the battlement. He doesn't flinch, she said, even under 20 blades. He's Elara's son, Cale murmured. I should have known she wouldn't bring me anything ordinary. You believe him, then? Cale's silence was answer enough. The council gathered by mid-morning, their voices hissing like snakes. Fenric was there, pale and sharp-eyed, clutching a scroll. Sire, he began, our seers have consulted the Codex of Moons. The child's arrival under this sky matches the prophecy exactly. Cale's jaw tightened. Prophecies bend to the will of fools who wish to use them. And yet, Fenric continued, they also warned that the child's presence will bring twin calamities, fire from the north, betrayal from within. The king's gaze grew dangerous. Are you implying treachery in my own court? Not implying, sire. Foretelling. Fenric's smirk deepened. And I would advise you keep the boy under lock and key until his true purpose is known. Cale's hand went to his sword hilt. If I ever learn you've spoken of this child outside these walls, I'll silence that tongue myself. Of course, Majesty, Fenric said smoothly, bowing low. But when he lifted his head, his eyes gleamed like a predator's. That night, Cale could not sleep. He returned to the old chamber, where Eric sat near the extinguished fire, staring into the ashes. Did you know they'd hate me? The boy asked quietly. They hate what they don't understand, Cale replied. Eric hesitated, then said, Mother said you were cruel. But she also said you were lonely. Cale froze. She told you that? She said you built walls around your heart until even the wolves couldn't climb them. A bitter laugh escaped him. She always did enjoy her poetry. Eric looked up. She said those walls would fall when the storm finally spoke. Cale turned away. Go to sleep, boy. But even as he said it, thunder rolled again outside, deeper this time, not from the sky but from the mountains. A sound too deliberate to be nature. The iron wolves at the rampart shouted in alarm. Bells rang. Cale drew his blade and strode for the courtyard. Stay inside, he ordered Eric. But as he reached the gates, the boy was already there beside him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. From the fog beyond the walls came figures cloaked in crimson, the sigil of the Red Fang. Mercenaries, but their armor bore symbols Cale recognized with dread. The mark of his dead brother. Impossible, Cale breathed. Ronan was executed 15 years ago. Maybe he didn't die, Eric whispered. Maybe the storm came back for both of us. Cale's sword caught the first flash of lightning as the gates burst open and the past came roaring in. The first scream tore through the night like a blade through silk. Flames licked the outer battlements as crimson-cloaked soldiers poured through the gates, their war cries rising above the thunder. The Red Fang had come with siege engines, fire oil, and something worse, dark banners shimmering with forbidden runes. Cale's sword left its sheath in a single, fluid motion. To arms, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the keep. Iron wolves, defend the walls. The courtyard erupted in motion. Soldiers raced to their posts. Arrows streaked across the storm-dark sky, and the air filled with the tang of steel and smoke. But Cale saw none of it clearly. His eyes were fixed on the symbol fluttering above the enemy lines. A wolf's skull crowned with red flame. His brother's sigil. Ronan, he whispered. The name tasted like blood. He had buried that man himself, burned the traitor's body, cast his ashes into the Black River after Ronan's failed coup 15 years ago. Yet here it was, returned with fire and vengeance. A soldier stumbled to Cale's side, bleeding from the shoulder. Sire, they breached the southern gate. There's magic, black fire. Our blades can't hold them. Kale's hand tightened on his sword. Evacuate the lower halls. Seal the civilians in the crypts. Leave no one in the courtyard who can't fight. And the boy. Kale's eyes flicked toward the keep. Eric stood in the doorway, frozen, his small hands glowing faintly blue in the stormlight. Kale's stomach twisted. Get him below.
Now.
The soldier nodded and ran, but before he reached the boy, lightning struck the tower beside them. The blast hurled stone and fire through the air. Kale ducked behind a shield of his cloak, then saw it. Eric, lying on the ground, his hands raised instinctively, the blue glow erupting outward. A wave of force exploded from him, knocking the advancing Red Fang soldiers off their feet. The flames bent backward, as if pushed by an invisible wind. When the light faded, Eric stood unharmed in the center of a circle of scorched earth. The men around Kale stared in awe. By the moons, one whispered. He's one of them. Kale's heart hammered. Not one of them, he thought.
Mine.
He leapt down from the wall and strode through the smoke toward Eric. You'll burn yourself out using that power. Do you hear me? Eric turned, eyes glowing faintly. I can help. You can die. So can you. Kale opened his mouth to rebuke him, but the look in the boy's eyes stopped him. That same calm defiance. Elara's eyes.
Fine, Kale said.
But stay behind me. Together they faced the next wave. Kale fought like a storm given flesh, blade flashing, every strike brutal and efficient. Eric stayed close, using bursts of blue energy to shield fallen soldiers or push enemies off balance. Then, through the chaos, a figure emerged from the fire, a man in crimson armor, his face hidden behind a wolf helm wrought of black iron. Kale Draven. The voice was deep, scarred by years and smoke. You took my crown, my blood, my name. Tonight I take it back. Kale froze. That voice was unmistakable. Ronan, he said softly. The man removed his helm. The face beneath was gaunt but unmistakably his brother's, same jaw, same eyes, twisted by bitterness. You should be dead, Kale said. You should have joined me, Ronan replied. You always were too weak to seize what's yours. But now I see you found my heir. Kale stepped between him and the boy. He's no heir of yours. Ronan laughed, harsh and hollow. Half your blood, half Elara's magic. A perfect weapon. And you bring him to me gift-wrapped. Eric's fists clenched. You killed my mother. Ronan's smirk faltered. So she told you the truth. Kale's roar drowned the thunder. He charged, blades clashing in a storm of sparks. The brothers fought like mirrored wolves, one forged by guilt, the other by hate. Eric watched, heart pounding, the storm inside him begging to be released. Kale disarmed Ronan with a strike that shattered his brother's sword. But before he could deliver the final blow, Ronan's hand shot forward, gripping a crystal shard pulsing with red light. The explosion tore through the courtyard. Kale was thrown back, smoke filling his lungs. When he rose, coughing, Ronan was gone, vanished into the storm with his soldiers. The keep burned. The dead lay scattered across the stones. Eric stumbled toward Kale. He said, I'm his heir. Kale knelt, gripping the boy's shoulders.
He lies.
He's always lied. But why does he want me? Kale looked toward the blackened gate, eyes narrowing. Because of what you are. He stood slowly, his silhouette framed by firelight. And now that he knows you live, he'll burn the world to claim you. Eric looked up at him, voice trembling. Then what do we do? Kale's jaw hardened. We hunt him first. Lightning flashed again, and for an instant, the reflection of both moons gleamed in Kale's eyes, silver and red. The prophecy had begun. The fires of Varen Keep still burned behind them when dawn crept over the valley. The once mighty fortress, the symbol of Kale's reign, was now a jagged silhouette of ruin. Smoke curled into the pale morning sky, carrying the scent of ash and memory. Kale did not look back. He led his horse through the mountain pass, Eric riding double behind him, wrapped in the Wolf King's cloak. The wind howled through the pines, scattering flakes of soot across the snow. How far are we going? Eric asked softly. Far enough that Ronan's spies won't find us, Kale said. There's only one place left he won't follow. The Frostwood, Eric murmured. Cale turned his head sharply. How do you know that name? Mother told me, the boy said. She said that's where the wolves still remember. Cale was silent for a long moment. Then she was wiser than I knew. They traveled for days, through valleys drowned in mist and across rivers frozen, so solid they sang beneath the horses' hooves. The boy slept little. When he did, he muttered in dreams, words that made Cale uneasy. Names he hadn't heard in decades. Each night, the same questions gnawed at him. How had Ronan survived? What had Elora truly known about the prophecy? And what would happen when the world learned the Wolf King had a son touched by ancient magic? By the fifth night, they reached the edge of the Frostwood, a forest so old it was said the first moonlight still lingered in its branches. Silver bark gleamed under the stars, and every breath turned to frost. Cale dismounted, scanning the tree line. We rest here. No fires. Eric slid down beside him, teeth chattering. Why can't we light one? It's freezing. Because fire tells stories, Cale said, crouching beside him. And out here, stories draw monsters. The boy blinked. You mean men? Cale shook his head slowly.
No.
I mean wolves. A low howl answered him from somewhere in the dark. Eric stiffened, gripping his cloak. They followed us? They were here long before we were born, Cale said. And if we're lucky, they remember who their true king is. Hours later, Eric stirred awake to a faint sound, footsteps crunching over snow.
Cale was gone.
The forest shimmered faintly under the twin moons, and for the first time, Eric realized how quiet it had become. Even the wind held its breath. Then, from between the trees, a shape emerged. Massive. Gray as smoke, eyes glinting gold. A wolf, taller than any horse. Eric froze. You're not real. The beast tilted its head. You speak as though dreams cannot walk in your world. The voice echoed, not through sound, but through thought. Eric stumbled backward. Who are you? I am the first, the wolf said. The memory of what your father was meant to be. My father. The creature stepped closer, paw silent in the snow. The Wolf King has forgotten his name. But you, child of storm and blood, carry it still. Eric's breath misted. You mean Cale? The great wolf nodded. He will lead again if he remembers the oath. But only you can wake it. Eric frowned. Wake what? The bond, said the wolf. Between king and moon. Between blood and pack. Before Eric could speak again, the wolf's eyes blazed white. He comes, it said. The one who wears your blood, but not your heart. The red fong spreads north. Then the vision shattered. Eric gasped, and the wolf was gone. Cale found him moments later, sword drawn, scanning the shadows. What happened? I saw something, Eric whispered. A wolf. It talked to me. Cale stiffened. What did it say? That you forgot who you are. For the first time, Cale looked almost afraid. Those aren't dreams, boy. That's the old tongue of the wolves. They haven't spoken to anyone in generations. Then they want us to remember, Eric said. Both of us. Cale stared into the snow for a long time, then said quietly, if the Frostwood has chosen to speak again, then the world is about to break. He rose, scanning the northern horizon.
Come.
We're not alone here. As they rode deeper into the glowing forest, Eric glanced back once. Between the trees, he saw eyes watching, dozens of them, gold and endless, following silently as they passed. And from somewhere far beyond the Frostwood, thunder rolled again. Only this time, it wasn't a storm. It was war marching closer. Snow fell like whispers, each flake catching the pale light of the twin moons. By the time Cale and Eric reached the Frostwood's heart, the air had changed, it hummed. The forest seemed alive, watching. Every tree bowed slightly toward the center clearing, where a circle of ancient stones stood half buried in frost. Cale dismounted. His boots sank into snow that hadn't melted in centuries. This is where the first Wolf Kings took the oath, he murmured. Before there were crowns. Before men forgot the wild. Eric looked around, eyes wide. It feels like it's breathing. It is, Cale said. Everything here remembers. As they stepped into the circle, the ground pulsed faintly beneath their feet. Runes glowed along the stones, one by one, blue and silver like moonlight caught in water. Then came the sound. Not quite a growl, not quite words. A layered rumble that seemed to rise from the earth itself. Kale fell to one knee, bowing his head. "We seek the memory of the pack," he said. The light coalesced into shapes, wolves, translucent and immense, their eyes burning gold. Spirits of the wolf blood. One of them, larger than the rest, padded forward. Its voice filled the clearing without sound. "Kale Draven, you broke the bond when you spilled your brother's blood." Kale's jaw clenched. "Ronan betrayed the oath. He murdered our kin." "And so the bloodline shattered," the spirit replied. "You became king of walls, not wolves." The others murmured in agreement, their spectral forms circling closer. Eric stepped forward before Kale could speak. "He didn't forget," he said, small but fierce. "He just stopped believing anyone remembered him." The wolves paused. Their golden eyes turned toward the boy. "And you, cub of storm, what do you seek here?" Eric swallowed. "Answers. My mother said the Frostwood would tell me who I am." The lead spirit tilted its head. "You are both her light and his shadow. The twin blood. The one the prophecy calls moonbound." Eric frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means your choice will decide whether the pack rises or devours itself." Kale rose, his voice sharp. "He's just a boy." "So were you when we gave you the crown," the spirit said. "Do not shield him from destiny." The clearing shuddered. The spirits began to fade, leaving behind only the alpha wolf. Its eyes met Eric's one last time. "North," it said, "to the Vale of Bones. There you will find the truth, and the weapon your enemies fear." Then the light died. Silence fell so suddenly it felt deafening. Eric turned to Kale. "The Vale of Bones, is it real?" Kale hesitated. "It's not a place men visit and return from. It's where the first wolf bloods buried their power." "Then we have to go." Kale's expression darkened. "Do you understand what they asked of you? That place kills kings." "Then maybe it's time a boy tried instead." Kale stared at him, and for a heartbeat, saw not a frightened child but something else, something ancient flickering in those blue eyes. "You have your mother's courage," he said quietly. "And her recklessness." "Guess that means I'm really yours," Eric said, smiling faintly. Despite himself, Kale huffed a laugh. "Careful. That kind of talk can get you killed in this family." They broke camp before dawn. The forest seemed apart for them, the snow shimmering faintly as they passed. But Kale felt the weight of unseen eyes, the wolves still watching, still judging. Halfway through the Frostwood, Kale's instincts tensed. "We're being followed." "I know," Eric whispered. "I can feel them." From the trees, arrows hissed through the air. Kale yanked Eric behind a fallen trunk, steel flashing as he deflected one mid-flight. Figures emerged from the mist, men and women in wolf-hide armor, their faces marked with pale paint. The wolf-sworn, descendants of the old bloodlines who'd vanished into the wilderness after Kale's rise. Their leader stepped forward, a tall woman with a scar across her cheek and eyes like silver glass. "The last king returns," she said. "And he brings the storm child." Kale's hand tightened on his blade. "You know who we are." "We remember everything the cities forgot," she replied. "And we've waited for this moment." "Then you know my brother hunts us." She smiled thinly. "So does prophecy." Her gaze shifted to Eric. "The boy carries the mark of moon and flame. The Frostwood stirs because of him. We are sworn to guide whoever bears it, if they can survive the proving." Kale's tone hardened. "He's not ready for your games." "This isn't a game," the woman said. "It's the only way to see if the wolves will follow him or devour him." Eric swallowed. "What kind of proving?" The woman's silver eyes gleamed. "The kind that decides who howls at the end." That night, under the twin moons, the wolf-sworn led them into a ring of torches deep within the forest. Drums began to beat, a slow, rhythmic thrum that seemed to sync with the pulse of the earth. Kale reached for Eric's shoulder. "You don't have to do this." Eric looked up at him. "You said once that a king earns his crown. Maybe a son earns his name." Then he stepped forward into the firelight. The wolves howled, and the proving began. The torches burned a pale blue now, their flames bending inward toward the circle. Eric stood in the center, his breath misting in the cold night air. Around him, the wolf sworn chanted in a language older than kingdoms, deep, guttural syllables that made the ground hum beneath his feet. Cale stood at the edge of the ring, every instinct in him screaming to stop this. But the silver-eyed leader, Lyra, laid a hand on his arm. "Interfere," she said softly, "and the Frostwood will never recognize him." "What happens if he fails?" Cale asked. Lyra's expression didn't change. "Then the forest takes him back." The air thickened. The runes carved into the stones began to glow, forming a spiral of light that wrapped around Eric's body like a living storm. He gasped as the world fell away beneath him. Snow, fire, and voices dissolving into darkness. He stood suddenly in a vast plain of silver mist. Above, the moons hung impossibly close, one red, one white. Their light poured over him until he could barely see his own hands. A voice echoed, distant but familiar. "You seek truth, child of storm. But truth is never gentle." Eric turned. A figure emerged from the mist, his mother, Elora, exactly as he remembered her, but her eyes were distant stars. "Mother?" She smiled sadly. "You walk where life and memory meet. You must see what was forgotten." The mist parted again, revealing a scene from years ago, a throne room bathed in firelight. Cale stood there, younger, angrier, sword in hand. Ronan knelt before him, wounded and laughing. "You can't kill me," Ronan taunted. "If you do, the curse will wake." Cale hesitated. His soldiers watched in silence. Elora rushed forward, pleading, "Cale, stop. The bloodline." But Cale's blade fell. And as it did, the torches in the vision blew out. Eric stumbled backward. "He killed him," he whispered. "He killed his own brother." Elora nodded, and by doing so, broke the oath that bound Wolf to Moon. That's why the Frostwood fell silent. The curse Ronan spoke of wasn't death, it was division. Eric's throat tightened. "Then why didn't you tell me?" "Because some truths only awaken when you face them." The mist rippled again. Another figure appeared, Cale, older now, watching his son in the trial circle. His face was worn, scarred, yet filled with something Eric hadn't seen before, fear. "Do you forgive him?" Elora asked. Eric hesitated. "I don't know." Then decide quickly. "The forest is listening." The mist cracked, and the ground beneath him split open, revealing a chasm of fire and shadow. From it rose the shape of Ronan, half ghost, half man, his eyes burning crimson. "You carry my blood too, boy," Ronan said. "Half of every monster your father made." Eric clenched his fists. "You're not my blood." Ronan smiled. "You can deny me, but you cannot deny power. Choose his mercy or my strength." Eric felt it then, a surge inside him, a split between blue and red, light and fire, both screaming to be claimed. He looked toward his mother's fading figure. "What if I can't choose?" Elora's voice was faint now. "Then both will destroy you." Outside the vision, Cale could see the boy's body shaking. Sparks of blue and crimson lightning danced around him, colliding violently. "Enough!" Cale shouted, stepping forward. Lyra caught his arm again. "If you break the circle, he dies." "Then what am I supposed to do? Watch my son burn?" She met his gaze. "Trust him." Cale's jaw tightened. "I don't trust anything anymore." But then, through the roaring wind, he heard Eric's voice, small but clear. "I choose neither." The light flared blindingly. "I am not my father's curse, or my uncle's vengeance," Eric said. "I'm both and neither. I am moonbound." The storm erupted. The ground trembled. And then, silence. When the light faded, Eric stood alone, breathing hard. His eyes glowed silver, neither red nor blue, but both entwined. The torches bowed toward him, their flames shifting to match his gaze. Lyra stepped forward, kneeling. "The forest is chosen." Cale exhaled shakily, pride and fear warring in his chest. He took a step toward his son. "Eric." The boy turned to him. It showed me everything. Kale nodded once. Then you know the truth. I do, Eric said. And I still choose you. Kale froze. The words hit harder than any blade. I killed my brother, he said quietly. And I forgave you, Eric replied. So we both survived this time. For a long, fragile moment, neither spoke. Then Kale reached out, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Then let the wolves remember their king again. Above them, the moons aligned perfectly, silver and crimson merging into one light. The trees of the Frostwood bowed as a single howl rose, echoed by 1,000 unseen throats. The pack had returned. The Frostwood no longer slept. Its silence had become a song, a haunting, beautiful chorus of howls that rolled down from the peaks and into the valleys below. Each cry carried a single message. The wolf blood had awakened. Kale stood at the edge of the clearing, his cloak stirring in the cold wind as the wolf swarm gathered behind him. For the first time in 2 decades, their torches burned openly, no longer afraid of the Red Fang's retribution. Lyra approached, bowing low. The forest acknowledges you again, Kale Draven. But the question remains, will your people? Kale's gaze remained fixed on the horizon. They will when they see who stands beside me. Eric stepped forward, silver eyes gleaming faintly in the dawn light. The scars of the trial still marked his skin, thin, glowing lines across his arms and neck like threads of starlight, but he no longer seemed frail. There was power in his presence now, quiet and steady. The wolf sworn bowed to him as one. The boy carries both halves, Lyra murmured. The storm and the shadow. Then he carries everything, Kale said. But his expression darkened as a raven circled overhead, dropping a bloodstained scroll at his feet. The wax seal bore a sigil Kale hadn't seen since his youth, the fanged wolf of House Ronan. He broke the seal, scanning the words quickly, his jaw tightening with every line. What is it? Eric asked. Kale's hand clenched. Your uncle has declared himself High King of the 5 Realms. He's united the Western clans under a new banner, the Red Fang. And he's marching east. Lyra's expression turned grim. How many? Kale looked up. Too many. They rode out that night. From the Frostwood, messengers ran like silver streaks through the trees, carrying the ancient call to every hidden pack and mountain clan. By dawn, Kale's army began to form, not soldiers, but hunters, outcasts, and the descendants of the wolves who once ruled beside men. Each bore the mark of the wolf blood, a crescent scar burned faintly into their skin during the proving. At their head rode Kale and Eric, father and son, their wolves pacing beside them like shadows given form. Eric looked out over the gathering host, eyes wide. There are hundreds of them. Kale nodded. Not enough to win a war, but enough to start one. By the second day, scouts returned with grim news. The Red Fang has taken the Vale of Swords, one reported breathlessly. Their banners stretch for miles. They have siege beasts made of iron and bone. Kale's expression hardened. Necromancy. Ronan's fallen further than I thought. He's not Ronan anymore, Lyra said quietly. The thing wearing his face is older. It walks with the hunger of the ancient kings. Eric frowned. Like the voices in the proving? Worse, Kale said. They found a way to bind that power. He's not just raising armies. He's raising history. That night, they made camp in the shadow of the Iron Peaks. Kale stood before the fire, staring into the flames as though they held answers. You're thinking about the First War, Eric said, approaching. Kale smiled faintly. You sound like your mother. She told me once, Eric said, that every war begins with a promise someone didn't keep. Kale's eyes reflected the firelight. She was right. I promised her peace. And instead, I gave her prophecy. Eric sat beside him. Then let's give her something different this time. Kale looked at his son, studying him quietly. You're not afraid? I was, Eric admitted. But fear means I care what happens. And that's what makes me strong. For the first time since they'd met, Kale laughed, a low, genuine sound that startled even himself. Perhaps you'll be a better king than I ever was, he said. I don't want to be king, Eric said. I just don't want to run anymore. Kale's gaze softened. Neither do I. Before dawn, the horns of war sounded in the distance. From the southern ridge, the Red Fang army approached like a flood of shadow and steel. Their banners were crimson, their armor blackened by fire. At their center rode a figure in dark armor, the sigil of the twin moons etched into his chestplate. Ronan. But when Kale saw his brother's face, he knew the truth immediately. This was no longer the man he'd killed. The thing inside him smiled with Ronan's mouth, but its eyes were pits of endless hunger. Brother, the voice boomed across the valley, carried by unnatural wind. You've been busy. Raising ghosts, teaching your whelp to howl. Kale raised his sword. You've stolen my blood and defiled my name. I'll take them both back. Ronan's laugh was cold. You'll try. But the moon has already chosen, and it isn't you. He raised his hand. The sky darkened. From behind his army, monstrous shapes emerged, wolves of bone and ash, their eyes burning red. Eric felt the ground shake beneath their charge. What are those? Remnants of the first pack, Kale said. Twisted by necromancy. Eric gripped his father's arm. Then let's remind them what real wolves look like. Kale turned to the wolf sworn. Sound the call. Lyra lifted a horn carved from a dire wolf's skull and blew. The sound echoed through the mountains, a deep, resonant roar that made the air tremble. From the frostwood, from the ravines and frozen lakes, came the answering cries of living wolves, hundreds, maybe thousands, racing toward the battlefield in a silver tide. The sky erupted in lightning as the two forces collided. Steel met fang, fire met frost, and the earth itself seemed to shudder beneath their fury. At the center of the chaos, Kale and Ronan met once more, two brothers divided by blood and prophecy. End it. Kale roared. Ronan's twisted smile spread. With pleasure. Their swords clashed. Sparks flew like stars breaking apart. And somewhere above them, the moons began to move, slowly, inexorably, toward perfect alignment once more. The night turned red. The moons had aligned, one silver, one crimson, and their light painted the battlefield in shifting waves of shadow and fire. The frostwood burned at its edges, every howl from the wolves drowned beneath the thunder of war. Kale's sword met Ronan's once more, sparks hissing through the falling snow. Every blow shook the earth. Steel clashed, broke, and reformed under their fury. All around them, the wolf sworn and the red fang tore into each other. Wolves leapt through flame. Soldiers fell beneath claws and teeth. Eric stood in the chaos, lightning flickering along his arms, his eyes glowing silver. But even with all his power, he could feel the tide turning against them. Ronan's magic was unnatural. His soldiers didn't bleed, didn't fear. Everyone that fell rose again, bound by whatever shadow now puppeteered their souls. Kale staggered back, blood streaking his armor. You can't win, Ronan, he growled. You've already lost your soul. Ronan laughed. You mistake me, brother. I didn't lose it, I traded it. He raised a gauntlet hand. The red light in his eyes flared brighter, and the ground beneath him split open. From it rose a column of black flame, shaped like a wolf skull. The air itself screamed. Eric turned to Lyra. What is that? The grave flame, she said, voice shaking. It devours anything bound to the old blood. If it reaches the forest, it will consume the frostwood and every spirit within it. Kale lunged forward, driving his sword toward Ronan's chest, but the blade shattered against the dark flame. Ronan's grin was cruel. You were always the warrior, Kale. But you never understood the power of belief. These men follow me because I promise them immortality. What do you promise yours? Kale's answer was a snarl. Freedom. He struck again, but Ronan's counterblow sent him sprawling. Kale hit the frozen ground hard, his breath leaving him in a gasp. Eric ran forward. Father. Ronan turned to him, his eyes burning brighter.
Ah.
The storm child. Come to claim your inheritance. Eric stood his ground, lightning coiling through his veins. You talk too much. Ronan's smirk widened. Then listen closely. He raised both hands. The flames behind him surged, twisting upward until they formed a massive spectral wolf, made of shadow and bone, its mouth dripping with molten light. The grave flame beast. It roared, shaking the mountains. Run, Kale shouted. But Eric didn't move. His silver eyes narrowed. The ground beneath him began to glow, runes burning through the snow. Blue lightning wrapped around his arms and chest, merging with a faint red glow from his veins. Kale froze. No. Eric, don't. I have to, Eric said quietly. This is what the prophecy meant. The prophecy kills every king who fulfills it. Then it's time a sun broke it. The lightning exploded outward. Eric rose into the air, surrounded by twin halos of red and blue light. His voice rang out, layered with echoes of the Frostwood spirits and something older, deeper. I am storm and shadow. I am light and blood. I am the howl between worlds. The grave flame beast lunged. Eric raised his hands, and the moons themselves seemed to answer. Silver and crimson beams poured from the sky, striking the boy like a crown of fire. The resulting blast turned night to day. A wave of energy tore across the battlefield, vaporizing the undead and throwing both armies to their knees. Wolves howled, their voices rising with the light. Kale shielded his eyes, his body trembling from the sheer force of it. When the brilliance faded, the grave flame was gone. So was Ronan. And at the center of a smoking crater stood Eric, barely conscious, but alive. Kale staggered toward him, falling to his knees. You idiot, he whispered, voice cracking. You actually did it. Eric looked up weakly. We did it. Kale pulled him close, holding him tight despite the boy's trembling. Rest now. The war is done. But even as he spoke, the red moon flickered, once, twice, and dimmed. Lyra approached, her expression unreadable. It's over, she said softly. But prophecy never ends cleanly. Kale looked up. What do you mean? She nodded toward Eric. The silver in his eyes had begun to fade, replaced by a faint crimson glow. The fire he destroyed tried to claim him, she said. Part of it still does. Kale's heart clenched. Then we find a way to cleanse it. There may be no way, Lyra warned. The moonbound carry both light and shadow. To hold balance means to walk the edge of becoming what they fight. Eric stirred, whispering through cracked lips. Don't let it win. Kale gripped his hand. I won't. You're stronger than this curse. But even as he spoke, the wind carried a faint echo, Ronan's voice, somewhere between a whisper and a promise. Blood remembers, brother. Always. The sun rose over the ruins of the battlefield. The frostwood smoked in the distance, and the wolves began their mournful song once more. Kale lifted Eric into his arms and turned north. We're going home, he said quietly. And far above, the twin moons drifted apart, their light dividing once again, one red, one silver, each carrying a fragment of the storm that had changed the world. The war ended, but peace did not come. Days bled into weeks as snow reclaimed the battlefield. The frostwood's trees grew silent again, their howls replaced by whispers. Where the grave flame had once burned, black ash now nourished new growth, small silver-leaf saplings, glowing faintly under the pale moons. Kale had seen 100 battlefields in his life. None of them haunted him like this one. He sat beside a campfire deep in the valley below the ruins, watching the flames dance low. Eric lay sleeping near the edge of the firelight, his face pale, his breathing shallow. Lyra knelt across from Kale, sharpening a blade that didn't need sharpening. He won't wake soon, she said. Whatever power he drew upon, it's still inside him, fighting to stay. Kale's eyes stayed fixed on the boy. He held back the grave flame. If that fire wants to linger, it can burn through me first. That's not how it works, Lyra said quietly. The moonbound carry the balance alone. If you try to share the burden, you'll kill him. Kale's hands clenched into fists. Then what do I do? Stand here and watch it take him. Lyra met his gaze. You lead. That's what kings do when they can't save what they love. Kale exhaled, slow and bitter. I stopped being a king the moment he called me father. When dawn broke, the valley shimmered with frost. Eric stirred, groaning softly. Kale was beside him in an instant. Easy, Kale murmured. You're safe. Eric blinked up at him, eyes flickering between silver and faint crimson. Did we win? Kale hesitated. We survived. That's enough for me, the boy whispered, smiling weakly. Kale brushed the hair from his forehead. You're too much like your mother. I'll take that as a compliment. It was one. For a moment, they simply sat in silence. The kind of silence earned through fire and loss. Then Eric said softly, She told me something before she died. Kale looked down. What? She said that when the last Draven stands before the moons, he'll have to choose, his blood or his people. Kale frowned. And what do you think she meant? Eric's voice trembled. That one of us won't live to see the dawn of the new age. Kale went still. You think it's you? Eric met his gaze, eyes shining faintly. I can feel it, Father. The grave flame isn't gone. It's waiting. And when it wakes again, it'll use me. Kale gripped his shoulder.
No.
I won't let that happen. You can't fight it forever. Kale's voice broke, barely above a whisper. Then I'll fight until it kills me. That night, the wolves gathered again, dozens of them, silent, their eyes reflecting the moons. Lyra stepped forward, holding a blade forged of moon steel. The forest has spoken, she said. The power in him must be sealed before it corrupts the bloodline. If it wakes, it will call the grave flame again, and this time, it will not stop at the frostwood. Kale rose. You're saying we should kill him. Lyra's voice was steady. I'm saying you must choose. His life or the world. The wolves bowed their heads. The forest waited. Kale's breath came shallow. He's my son. And the world is your pack, Lyra said. A king protects both if he can. But sometimes, he must sacrifice one. Kale stared at the blade. Its light glimmered with the color of Eric's eyes, silver and red. Give it to me, he said. He entered the clearing where Eric stood, the moons directly overhead. The boy looked up, eyes calm. I know why you're here, Eric said softly. Kale's hand trembled around the hilt. You shouldn't. I do, Eric said. And I'm not afraid. Kale stepped closer. There has to be another way. Eric smiled faintly. There is. You just won't like it. He placed his small hand over the blade. The steel began to glow brighter, humming in tune with the moons. Kale's eyes widened. What are you doing? I'm finishing it, Eric whispered. The prophecy said one life would end the war. It never said it had to be taken. A surge of light burst between them. The moons flared white. Eric, no. Kale shouted. But it was too late. The boy stepped forward, pressing the blade against his own chest, not piercing, but merging. The metal melted into light, sinking into his heart. For an instant, the world went utterly still. Then the light rippled outward, washing over the frostwood, the mountains, the ash, the ruins. Every scar of war vanished. Every whisper of grave flame burned away. And Eric fell. Kale caught him before he hit the ground. No, no, no. Eric's eyes fluttered open, faintly glowing silver one last time. You kept your promise, he whispered. What promise? Kale's voice broke. That I wouldn't face the dark alone. Kale held him tighter, tears falling freely. I was supposed to protect you. You did, Eric breathed. You taught me how to protect others. Then his hand slipped from Kale's grasp, and the world was quiet again. The frostwood mourned for 7 days. Wolves gathered from every valley, howling beneath the moons. When the 8th dawn came, Kale walked alone to the top of the mountain and laid the moonsteel sword upon a cairn of stone. Lyra joined him, her voice soft. He gave the world back its balance. Kale nodded, and left me to live in it. What will you do now? Kale's gaze drifted to the horizon, where the first light of spring touched the snow. Rule, if they'll have me. Not as a king of walls. As a keeper of wolves. He turned to leave, his cloak stirring in the cold wind. And when the moons rise again, I'll be waiting. Because my son's story isn't finished. That night, as the moons crossed the sky, their light met for a heartbeat, silver and crimson intertwining once more. And far in the distance, deep within the frostwood, a single wolf cub howled, a newborn, with eyes that shimmered silver red. The world had remembered. And the promise endured. And so the wolf king kept his promise, not as a ruler of men, but as a father who remembered love stronger than fate. The world was born again in his son's light, and though Eric's story ended beneath the twin moons, his spirit still walks the frostwood, watching, waiting for the next soul brave enough to challenge destiny itself. If this story reached you, if it made you feel something, don't let it fade here. Subscribe and step back into the fire with us. We tell dark fantasy love stories, where hearts break, kings fall, and even the moon remembers their names. Thank you for watching, and may the wolves guard your dreams tonight.